I'd like to call this this meeting of the Budget Committee together. And to start the meeting, I'd like to go through and just reintroduce everyone. There are members at the table that have not been at the table before, so I'd like to start. I am Scott Sawyer, Chair of the RSU 16 Budget Committee.
Arthur Reed, Principal at Minot Consolidated School.
Rick Benoit, Principal at Holland Community School.
Come on, we may as well kind of do them in sequence here.
Angie Taylor, Principal of Elm Street School.
Hi, Angie.
Colleen Quint, Minot Budget Committee.
Danny Callahan,
Erlen Torrey, Poland Budget Committee.
Mariella Jones, RSU Board. Mary Martin, RSU Board.
Tina Love, RSU Board.
Kim Brandt, Assistant Superintendent.
Tina Meserve, Superintendent.
Wonderful. Tina, should we start the meeting tonight by going over some of the questions that were asked at the end of the last meeting? I know that there was a question on a salary line for transportation.
Yes. So the question about the salary line had to do with bus driver salary, I believe.
Yes.
And Wendy Rich has been out sick. So she was out sick yesterday. She came in today, but just for a short while. And what she thinks she has discovered is that there is an extra bus driver listed in there in error. So what happened is we have a bus driver who's out on medical leave this year, unpaid medical leave, who's returning, so his salary's still in there, and we put in for an additional bus driver. I didn't have her make any changes yet because one of the things that we need to verify is how many hours that substitute is working. We've had some issues we've had some substitutes that have been working 30 hours a week, but we're still paying as substitutes. That's not going to be allowed going forward without us paying benefits and things like that with the new laws about providing health care through the Obamacare medical program. So before we take it out, we need to determine if that's really going to be a maintenance of effort position and need to stay in there, or if we can pull it out and just have the one substitute. So until she has time to meet with Tom and to check that a little more carefully, how many hours the person's been working, we left it in.
Okay.
So, but there is we think there's an error there.
Okay. All right. Work in progress.
Yes.
All right. I guess what we'll be doing is hearing from the 3 elementary schools and also central office tonight. So what do we have coming up first?
So just to give you a little bit of oversight, we have been working as a team on our sheets. So we have some new sheets for you. You will notice some changes from this original document that we gave you. And at first, I was trying to keep it as close to possible, then I realized when we see gaps or discrepancies, we need to correct them on the spot so we don't later get a little further down the line and realize there were some mistakes. So what you'll see today is what our actual is in these sheets. And then next week, I think next meeting, I'm gonna print you a new one of these full spreadsheets because there were enough lines that changed, even if it was only a little bit, that I think it might be confusing if we don't print another sheet out. But we'll go through them a little bit at a time. And
I know that there was a request at a previous meeting to have us keep a running chart of things that change, both increases and decreases, and so we have started that. We'll keep that up to date.
So Kim's working on that, and the other thing is our goal is to get the sheets out to you at least the day beforehand. So if you have questions, you can email them to us, and we can do the research before walking in here. But with Wendy out yesterday, that wasn't possible. So we do apologize that you didn't get them ahead of time. But that is our goal for the next meeting, that you'll have them a few days ahead of time. If you do have any questions as we're going down through, of course you can ask them tonight. But if you get home and you're looking down through it and you are realizing you have a question based on some of the new information, don't hesitate to email, and we'll correct them and announce the information at the next session as we go. So we're going to have Arthur Reed, Principal of Minot Consolidated, present his budget first. And we have a copy of the information for you here. I'll have you pass that down on that side.
I'll wait till everybody has the budget before I start. Just a little intro before I start. The last This is the third year that we've really, as elementary principals, tried to work very closely together. The first year, we focused a lot on trying to equal some of the technology opportunities. Last year, we worked on some of the items within the budget that didn't seem proportional to the one school to the other, so the students were getting some of the same opportunities. And again, this year, we're doing the same thing. One of the things that changed this year in all our budgets will be the Ferry Beach, because it was done third, where we've gone more or less like we did with the library last year to about per student. You can't do exactly because the student rate changes, but it gives us that general idea, so it's the general concept about that. The last couple of years, I've had a fairly large budget, so this is really an enjoyable year for me to be sitting here and going first. It's 1%. So anyway, so we wanted to go down through, and I'll start on the first page and highlight some of the changes. I have written some comments out to the side that I hope will help. The first one was the special ed with a guidance counselor, social worker. Last year, we had talked about making the changes, and it didn't actually get done. But basically, our social worker works with our special ed population 2 out of the 3 days that she's here. So to more accurately reflect that, this year you'll see that. So that's why that's down substantially. I still have the social worker for the same amount of days in my building, but it's more appropriate to the population she's working with. What we haven't had in the past at all the schools is supplies and books for the social worker, so we made sure all the schools put in something in that area for them this year, which is the 4th line down. If you continue down, the next one that you'll see a change on, a 1,585% change, is basically the insurance with ed tech, so that's why that change is there.
Could I ask a quick,
Yep.
a clarifying question? So,
Sure.
what does that mean? Is that one or more people coming on to insurance who are not on? Is that somebody
It's
going?
one person coming on to insurance that
Yep.
currently was not taking insurance.
Okay,
They are now, because of the contract, eligible for that and taking advantage of that.
great. Thank you very much.
Yep. Next one is books in the library, which we appropriate about $15 per student, and this year, based on our counts that we took in October with new students, that's up slightly, $150 at my school. School level ed tech, that one's up due to contract issues, $1,115, and the benefits are also up.
And is that because of a rate increase, Arthur, in the?
That's based on the 10%. It's more than 10%. Yes, it is. Most of it is based on the rate increase.
Great, thank you.
If you go down near the bottom of the page, there was a decrease in elementary benefits for the principal. Area that is professional services, which is for PBIS training, RTI, math, and literature. Some of those in the past we hauled them out, and they were funded with title funds, which we can no longer do, are no longer doing at this point with the funding. So that's one reason, and that's the area that we need to focus on based on our needs of the K-6 student population.
So if I can add a little bit to that, the new regulations for Title I, the use of Title II money is you can't use that money for regular required work. So if you're required to create a teacher evaluation system by, new legislation, that's required of all school districts. You can't use Title II funds for that. We can use Title II funds for doing regular professional development, like sending staff to conferences. So you can't do it for any regular curriculum work because we're supposed to be working on our curriculum anyway. So there are a few things like that that in the past they've allowed us to pay for. So last year we made a big reduction in our professional development lines. We cut probably close to half of the money out of professional development. Some of that has now seeped back in because we're realizing we don't have the
funds.
money to do we have the early release days to do the regular school year stuff, but we also have a bunch of summer work to do when you do vertical alignment of your curriculum, or like the process with the teacher evaluation system is going to be a big deal. So some of that has creeped back in because it was pulled out, and now we have a gap.
The next one
Colleen
is,
has another question.
oops,
It's okay. Sorry. Just back for 1 minute, Arthur. One of the
Yep.
pieces that I had made a notation about that I don't see one from you on is the software-related repairs and maintenance. That's up pretty significantly, and I'm sure
okay,
there's a good
and,
explanation.
okay, I can explain that.
Yep, 'cause I think that
whole
was a
area
cost.
that I skipped is basically Linda, it is Linda Chase. and
Oh, we're
she'll-
gonna blame Linda? Okay,
No,
great.
she'll be here
Write that
for,
down.
not blaming Linda. Linda will be here to explain that section.
Okay, yeah, because I noticed
Okay.
that was not unique to Minot. That was, all the
Right.
schools had something
Yeah,
there, so.
so she
Okay,
will be
I
here.
can wait. Thank you, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
And she'll be presenting at our next session.
Oh, okay, great.
And employee training and development, and this is my line, is up, trying to be consistent on what we're doing and offer trying to attend some more workshops, which basically what was in there was for one workshop this year. And several of the workshops I went to came out of title funds, which won't be available next year also. The increase in the telephone is just an upgrade. That's why that line is up.
And you'll see that on all the
They were all
adminis-
upgraded.
you'll
Yeah.
see
They were
on
all
the-
upgrades.
yeah, the account is.
The count is being upgraded. I have some comments on page 2 on the maintenance budget. It will be more than willing to answer them if anybody has questions about them. If not, there will be a presentation later on about them. I don't want to just skip over them and blame them on Kim and Gary so I feel comfortable answering any of those questions, but I'm going to skip. I was planning on skipping down to the employee change at 12%, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 16 lines down. There's a 0%, a negative 13, and then a negative 12. Regular salary,
Right,
that's
yep.
maintenance. I can skip down a little farther. Teacher salary at 2% change, and that is anticipation of contractual obligations, and that's a number in there at this point as a placeholder for negotiations. So the minus has to do with us qualifying for at the next line, it's down 47% because of title funding. We are now going to be, student population will be eligible for title funding, and it doesn't change the people that will be there doing the work, it just changes the funding source for that. So that's the reason that line is down. Next line is the one that I talked about briefly, was the increase for Ferry Beach. That was up for all of us. Plus, for some of us, it went up even more because we're doing it per student instead of dividing it a third, and a third. So obviously, the one that gets the most affected will be PCS by that increase. And the next line is employee training and development, and we've been spending all this year working on writing, and this is the 3-6 lines, and to send somebody to the Lucy Calkins Institute was our goal in this line, which will cause some of those increases. If you could, any questions?
Sorry.
No.
So just a couple of the things here, and again, I noticed this in the other budgets as well. It's a little, I know this is a maintenance of effort budget.
Yep.
A couple of these things, I can't quite tell if it's a maintenance of effort, or,
Yep.
like the conferences, I don't know whether I know that you just said some of the title funding can't cover it, so now we have to cover it elsewhere, but are there new conferences you're looking to go to, or?
But I would say that would be true every year. So,
Yep,
I mean, we're not going to the same standard conferences. The quantity of conferences would not be changing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they're a little more mattering on what they are for conferences.
yep,
And how we're funding some of them has changed.
Okay.
But we're not just all of a sudden now throwing in a whole bunch of conferences that we haven't had in the past. So
Okay.
the focus this year is on writing.
Yep.
So Lucy Cotkins' specialty is writing, and that's why the focus would be on writing, although we do have the conferences and have in the past.
And one thing I'd like to add about that is that if you looked 2 years back, you'd see that's still quite a bit less. And so, again, it kind of goes back to, we tried to replace it with title funds and then are realizing that that doesn't cover the need. And this goes along with our strategic plan, which writing literacy is a big focus for us, and that's in the strategic plan for this year. And the other thing that we're doing, which goes along with the strategic plan, is we're trying to send teams of people to better conferences that have higher level of quality, and asking them to come back and be leaders. So we have a shared leadership model that
Right.
we've talked a lot about in our strategic plan. So the Lucy Calkins is a relatively expensive conference, and it's in New York City. And so, you have the cost of traveling there and some overnight stay and a very high-quality, research-based writing experience for our teachers. And they've all agreed when they return that they are leaders at their schools and will share their new learning and facilitate professional learning communities around the area of writing. So we feel like we get big bang for our buck by doing that, as compared to just sending them to maybe local conferences and people going to different things and not really having that expectation that it impact our instruction when they return, and that if we're spending this money, that they are then responsible for being leaders in the school.
Okay, thanks.
Next line is the instructional supplies, and basically everyday math workshops takes care of that increase. They did go up substantially this year. There's nothing new or unique than they haven't, and we also, last year, teachers throughout the years add 1 or 2. You have to have enough, so if you have new students coming in, we started to use them up thinking we would be ready to do a math change, so I encouraged them to use them all up, so now I'm down even lower than I would be. So that's why that supply line is up a little bit. The next one is the intervention program for literacy, which supports our RTI, and that is something that we were not a title school, so we weren't able to get funds for that. So that's something that we're trying to make sure our kids have the opportunity where they do at the other 2 schools for that program. It's an intervention program for struggling readers.
But you said, did I hear correctly that Minot now is eligible for title? So will that be effective in the next academic / fiscal year?
Yes.
Yes.
And it's possible, depending on how the funding comes in, that could actually be covered under the Title I budget.
Right.
But we don't know our allocation until June.
Yeah, okay.
So,
Well, that's both a good thing and a less good thing.
Right.
yes, so
Right.
we're hopeful that actually may be able to be
Yep,
covered.
okay.
Teacher salaries down, teacher salary benefits up. Then we have, again, the employee training development, and that was towards, that's a K2 line. In your budget, you have, the one that it was above was the 3.6, and this is a K2 line. It's broken out for state funding wise. They have you break out K2 and 3.6. So that's why it's not just one line on that. Instructional supplies were up in the K2 also, and it's math journals was the main. The next one were books. That went up some. I have a bunch of new teachers, needs for books, but I also have increase in periodicals. Last year, I did it by classroom, not by teacher, so I didn't have as much money in there as I was supposed to have. That was my mistake. So this year I've corrected it. And the 4-year-old program, and basically the supply line went down a little bit this year because this is the 3rd year. The first couple of years we were trying to get things to start and establish the program. Everything comes out of there, from our furniture to our supplies, out of that one line, so that's why that line dropped a little bit. Any questions?
I have a question.
Yep.
Back on page 2, there's a 34% increase in heating fuel.
Yep.
Just curious, is that something that you would typically put in a budget, just budget for 34% increase?
The budget, I'll explain why it's in there, okay? It's budgeted on how many gallons that they've burnt the last 3 years, because Gary and I have had this conversation, so I feel comfortable, and the current price he's paying. And it's also the propane also, which has gone up tremendously, so it's based on that, so.
What are we using propane for at the schools?
Well, we have, at my school, we have the lunch, but we also have my furthest wing, 4-6 wing,
Okay.
that has propane heaters in all those rooms.
They're just propane space heaters?
Yep.
Are those
Because it's a
the portables that were converted to?
Okay, the portable, it's the portable that's attached to the
building.
building. It's the Schiavi addition,
Okay.
the last addition at Minot, okay?
Okay.
And those all have those gas heaters in them, along with your kitchen, of course. Is that?
So one of the things that you are going to find is sometimes the number for the FY budget, what we did was we looked at actual, not what was budgeted. So if something was really under budgeted, or if there was a transfer of money in there because we were way under budgeted, we took that into account when we planned for next year. So it may say a 34% increase. The cost may only be a 10% increase. But if we know that over the last 3 years, if we've used a certain amount, we've made sure we've made those adjustments. And if I could say one more thing, just to Colleen's question about maintenance of effort versus new things. There is a gray area there that is
Right.
pretty challenging. We've had quite long conversations about whether something is maintenance of effort or not. So as we go through the process, we would be open to this committee saying, you've got to consider your professional development lines.
Yep.
They need to come down some, or, something along those lines, because there definitely was some gray area when we were making those decisions.
Yeah, sure, good, thank you.
Any other questions for Arthur from the committee? Thank you, Arthur. Appreciate it very much. Next.
So next we have Elm Street, and Angie Taylor will be presenting the Elm Street budget.
Okay, so I'm going to try not to be redundant. I'm going to start with, so I have an increase of 5%. Yes, Arthur and I sometimes compete, but I can't come close to him this year. Which, if you do the math, it's about $90,000. And so then I just want to point out one piece. If you do the math again, you're going to notice that I've had the big half of it is the fact that my Title I ed tech is moving into the regular budget. So she used to be paid, or maybe a he later, but it's a she now, used to be paid in Title I. It's now being paid out of the regular budget. So that's over half of the increase of this budget. So I just want to point that out right away. And that includes benefits, salary, and retirements.
And that is an offset from the Minot Consolidated.
Right.
So Minot got money, which meant somebody else lost money.
So in theory, we split it, and we're about 2% each, or 2.5%.
Nice try.
Okay, whenever I can.
And I'll also add on Angie's behalf, Minot and Mechanic Falls has also been impacted by the charter school, so we budgeted money this year for the charter school. She only has, I think, one student this year,
Right. Yeah.
but so I think we budgeted like $14,000 for that, assuming that person goes forward.
And also, one of the other things that's different from last year to this year is that we increased by 30 students. And so what you're going to see in the instructional lines and the book lines, that's the increase. So we have to account for the 30 additional students. That includes everyday math books. That includes books for the classroom. That includes library books. So if we work our way down the budget, and we'll just skip over the social worker for now, and we look at the instructional supply lines, you are going to see an increase in every single one, with the exception of, I think, one of the book lines. General supplies increased, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. That has other things that factor into it. So I want to point that out. I also want to point out that we made a couple of choices last year that's going to affect this budget. They're minor things, but they matter. We have to pay a maintenance on our postage machine, which is actually close to $800, and we did not factor that in last year, so we only budgeted for the postage. and you actually have to pay for the machine too. So there's that increase, which you'll see in our postage line under the principal area. Furthermore, we want to do some professional work within our buildings. So you'll notice like the purchase professional services line, they have gone up or they've been added. So if you see like a funky thing to the right that doesn't have a percentage, that means that line's been added to the budget because we didn't have it at Elm Street School, but it was at PCS or it was at Minot. So that is an increase to the overall budget. But the reason we did that is we had very little money to actually bring experts sometimes into our building to do some work with, so PBIS is positive behavior system. We think that's very important. I think we're all challenged by the new student that's coming into our building, especially like the new kindergartner. And I think we'd like to have the opportunity to work with our teachers, and sometimes that requires someone else coming in. So we all actually increased those budget lines a little bit. And I do feel that's a maintenance thing because we have to address the new challenges that come every single year, and I think we have to have money available to do that, and I don't think we can function, and I think we'll see our achievement decrease if we can't address some of those really hard areas, those challenging areas. To continue, and if I'm talking too fast, please stop me, because I know that's one of my issues. Ferry Beach, already mentioned, we didn't budget enough. That's been an increase. Paper, we tried really hard to budget for less paper. I'm trying really hard to go as digital as I possibly can, but we're not there. And we're actually pretty close to running out, so what we do is we try to keep a surplus, so that one year we don't have to budget as much. Our surplus is depleting, so therefore there's that instructional line is increasing with that. To say a little bit about the Teachers College Conference, I was going to say the same thing as Tina. I think it's sometimes really important to go to a conference. The administrators are also in our line. We budgeted to go as well. And I think that's a really important opportunity for us to work along with our teachers and then to come back and work with the rest of our staff, which is our main goal with that. And as you can see by the decreasing, writing scores, and Tina was right last night, you can't compare it because it's apples to oranges in terms of years, but it's a serious problem that we actually want to address. And I think in order to do that, we have to have some professional development around that. And the Teachers College is uber awesome. It is like the place to go for this. So I just want to say that out loud.
And Teachers College is the same thing as Lucy Calkins.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Right, Okay. I think a lot of you guys know probably. Let's see what else that increased. So I want to point out stipends. I try to do this whenever I can. It decreased by 12%. And that's important because I think Rick's going to actually ask for an RTI coordinator. And really it's a wash. So we decreased by 1,200 so that he could increase because the student population is so much higher than Elm Street or Minot, and he needs more support in that area. So we really did try to talk and do some of those things so that we could actually support each other, even though we're not in the same building. Let's see what else. I'm going to skip over technology, and I'm going to skip over maintenance because my understanding is our friend Gary and Kim actually is going to present the maintenance budgets for you guys, and so we'll let them work out those details. But I think that covers most of what my increases are for this year. And if I missed anything, yes.
Yeah, you're not getting up that easy. Kidding me? All right, so I just a couple of things, just to slow you down and go back. So at the bottom of your page 1, 3 lines from the bottom is a conference line. Right, to employee travel professional development, that's 0. In the original budget that we got, it was an increase of $1,000. So, and here it's 0. So what the thinking behind that is the piece that you were talking about bringing people on site, or is that something different?
I think my page is different than yours. So
I'm sorry, I apologize. Of course.
Few numbers in there.
If I can read them, 55810 and then 070 employee travel.
55810.
So
Right,
I might
got
need
it.
to answer
There we go.
that because I'm not
Yes.
sure if I talked to Angie about this or not.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yep,
Awesome.
oops.
Sorry, Angie.
All right.
When Wendy and I were working this morning, again, we're always looking for equity amongst the schools, and what we noticed is that the other two administrators had $500 for travel, and
Okay.
and Angie had $1,500, and we didn't have a reason for that, so we felt like it would be important that they had equal opportunities for travel, and that if there was additional needs for administrative travel, like say we go to the Lucy Calkins conference and it costs more, that we would work on having that in our grant.
Got it. My other question is, it's in the
I
general.
can follow this one.
Oh,
so
okay,
if
great.
you
So,
need to-
on page 2, about 6 or 8 lines down, general supplies, it just about doubled.
Yes, so that's.
And so the explanation for that
I'm gonna give you the
is,
explanation for that right now. I'm gonna pull up my other document.
see, I
right
knew
here.
you could.
Can you tell me where you were, Colleen?
Certainly, it's about 6 lines down on page 2, general supplies. 56,070, if that helps. It's a 97% increase, so it just about doubled.
Is that the, I think
That's maintenance.
That's maintenance.
Oh, that's, you said maintenance,
There's no way I
okay.
doubled that. Yeah, that's, so what happened with, so they're gonna point this out, but also maintenance, what happened is some lines, they moved some things into different lines and they created new lines. So you are gonna see some new lines when you look over the maintenance budget. So there may be, they may look like almost like 100% increase when in fact it just shifted into a different line that made more sense, like for instance, furniture.
Yep, okay. All righty, that helps.
And Kim will be addressing the maintenance lines when they have the presentation for facilities. I'm not sure if that's in our next, the 25th.
2 other quick questions, if I could. So on whether you call it Lucy Calkins or Teachers College, so just out of curiosity, approximately how many teachers attend something like that?
Well, in theory, we don't know, because we have to fill out an application, and it's possible that no one will get in,
Yep.
right? Our hope is that we're gonna take 3 teachers from each school and then an administrator. So
Administrator
we-
from each school or administrator from the district?
All 3 of us right here are
So,
gonna go
so a
on.
dozen people would
You
be
got it.
going down?
Yep.
And you'd be going down as a cohort team
We
to
sure
the same
would.
thing?
Yes.
Doing learning, coming back,
And then
sharing?
coming back, yeah.
Got it. Good, okay. Final question, the very last item, instructional supplies, 4-year-old program, the notation says Waterford, I assume we're not making crystals, so that is
So that's-
reading,
you
math,
got it,
what is it?
reading.
Reading,
It's
got it,
reading,
thank you.
yep.
Okay,
That's actually, it's a computer program that our 4-year-old programs have in all 3 schools.
Fantastic.
And they use that during station time to practice literacy,
Great.
to work on their literacy.
thank you.
Mary Ellen, do you have a question?
Yeah, how many students, you said you had 30 more
Yeah.
students, how many,
Yeah.
I was trying to
We're
figure
up
out
to, yeah, we're up to,
percentage-wise.
so, well, we started, so we have 295 students. Percentage-wise, I guess that would be about a 10% increase, actually, yeah, it was pretty shocking.
Yeah.
So it's good news. Our first grade classroom is the largest at this point, we're just talking about that, it's getting up to 22 and 23. So hopefully I'd love to have more kids, but in that area, it would be nice to keep.
We
keep it
don't want
22.
more that
Yeah, yeah.
create the need for another
Right,
teacher. yeah.
exactly, that's right. So I'm not asking for that. It's not even on my priority list.
But that's something important for people to know in terms of the supplies and
It's a
such other
10%
things that you
increase
have
in
a 10%
students.
increase in students.
And that, Arthur, didn't you say that there was an increase at Minot? Did I see something in here about a pupil count?
There is, yep.
And can you just tell us what those numbers are for you? How many new students and how many total? Do you know?
Boy, now I can, I'm 269, I can't remember what it was. I think it's about 12, but don't hold me to that. I can look it up, 12 or 14
Okay, great. No, that's great.
approximation.
Any further questions?
No.
Angie, thank you so much.
Well, you're very welcome, Mr. Snyder.
So I bet you guys can guess who's next. We
Well, Lucy
saved,
knows the drill now.
Right,
So one more thing, Karen just shared with me, she was looking at the enrollments, K through 6, and there's no bubble class coming
Yeah.
through. So it looks like
Oh,
the
good.
enrollments will be pretty steady.
Third grade's the biggest, but the rest of them are all around 130, which has been what it has been since I've been principal.
Yep.
So,
That's great.
Thank you.
That's good news for everybody.
That's right.
Although it has been
yes, it has.
in 5 years.
6 years from now. Be a bubble class.
There's less students overall now.
Oh, are there?
Actually, our enrollment's been going up, but our enrollment's gone up, but that's primarily because of adding pre-K in the last few years. This year, our most recent count shows us down 7 students from last year, so K-12.
'Cause
So
I
it's
remember- yeah.
pretty stable, but we had an increase last year, and we got additional summer school funding because our population increased.
Yep.
And, that was primarily because of pre-K, not that the class sizes were getting larger
Yep.
system-wide.
Because I think it was around 270 or so when my kids were there. That sounds about right, I think so. So it's a little more stable.
Mr. Benoit,
All right.
good evening.
Good evening.
Thank you for coming.
I'll kind of walk down through, but feel free to interrupt if you.
Could you go a little slower than Angie?
I don't know, I think that'd be
She
very
was
good.
pages ahead of me.
Okay.
I was trying to keep up with her, so.
Well, and especially if we've made notes on an earlier
Yeah.
version that doesn't quite
Yep.
fit.
Okay, so we'll just go down through, and what I'll do is I've, again, also made some notes on the sides, some things that, even though some of the increases, I guess, by dollar value are pretty small, have some changes in there, so. Under our guidance social worker, our guidance counselor, if you weren't aware, at PCS, actually, she had left at the end of October. And so we had to bring on a new guidance counselor, so that was a change. Salary a little higher, but did not take the benefits. Dues and fees went up, clinical supervision for all of our guidance staff went up just a little bit. Stipends, there's a small increase there. Yeah, it's pretty minor. It's actually the teacher mentor for PCS. We have some new staff that require mentors, and the benefits go under that. The next series is under the library. So the library aid, the benefits went up. I'm not sure why 12%, honestly. 10% is what we're budgeting, an estimate on the increase in the health insurance.
It's possible that last year was under budgeted a little
Right.
bit.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things we found,
was
like
a
with.
new- yeah.
Yeah, so it may have been under budgeted, and then, so it looks like a larger increase, it was just that it was.
You're catching up a bit too.
Yeah.
Yeah, got it.
$150 increase under the library books, and again, we gained about 10 students this year. The technology supplies that's more of an actual expenditure. The next series, as with everybody else, is, I'd be happy to answer if anybody has questions, but down for about probably 15 lines, all falls under technology. And we had likewise that large increase in software-related repairs. But that is something that Linda will address, all of those. Continuing down through secretary benefits. I'm not sure why registrars is next to that, but
Well, it's Belinda, I assume. It's Belinda, we share Belinda, and so now it's part of our
so it's a
budget.
piece of her budget, okay.
And also Jean McNally.
That's right.
So Jean McNally does some registrar work as well, so those were divided up 5 ways, because they do their.
For each building, basically.
Yeah.
Got it.
They help us.
Did you divide it proportionate to the number of students in the building, just out of curiosity?
I think they did it just
Just
divided
by
5
5?
ways, to make that easy, because, you never know where the student enrollment's gonna be, or
Sure.
where whether you're doing the October 1st count or whatever, their work is pretty similar, so.
Sure.
I believe Linda said that I believe Wendy said that they just divided it 5
Okay.
ways.
Okay, still, these are all still under the office of the principal. We actually had budgeted ourselves for fewer courses for this upcoming year. The reality of just how demanding the administrative position is kind of limits when you can take courses. We're still hoping to be able to take some. And that also includes Kelly Marston because she's with PCS. She's actually there 3/5 of the time. Trying to keep going down. Employee training and development, again, we budgeted $1,200 per principal, and then an additional $600 for Mrs. Marston. Postage, we have a small increase, and postage went up again, so we had that. The telephone upgrade, the same as everybody's, the contract was due to that. The next two lines, the employee travel, I just moved that to put that more in line with, actually, that's what Arthur has. I don't remember, Angie, how you have yours in there, but that was to put it under employee travel rather than just employee travel for professional development. Big increase in general supplies under the office of the principal for a fireproof file cabinet. We were required to have our student files in a fireproof cabinet. We actually have right now an overflow cabinet that is not fireproof that we're having to use now. So we need a budget for one for next year so that we can put those files in. Keep going down. Copier lease was down. The insurance went up to PCNL.
I have a question. What is
Yeah.
PCNL insurance?
That's our
Property,
liability.
casualty, and
It is?
liability.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think
That
all of
went up
ours
it went up on all of them.
Yeah, I see it
Yeah.
did.
Property,
Yeah.
casualty, and liability.
So, what happened with our liability insurance is we had a 10% increase, but the boards and the central office liability dropped way down, and the schools actually went up more than 10%. So the numbers that you're seeing from them is actual. We have a new liability company the last few years, and they've now got 2 years or 3 years of data on us, and they're adjusting
Yeah.
accordingly to
Okay, good.
what the need is.
Yeah, because that was going to be my next question. I wondered how 108% went to 10% actual. but-
Yeah.
Okay, good, thank you.
Okay, the equipment and furniture, last year we added another section of pre-K, which we managed to pay for the tech and actually the tech came out of local entitlement, the teacher came out of title funds, but we added that program without adding anything in the budget for a pre-K classroom with furniture. So we did some scrambling this year and basically put some things on the back burner. Trying to get by one more year with what we have, but inevitably it catches up to you. So, and the other piece was adding that pre-K section. We moved our library down to the other end of the building, and in doing so, there was the need for some new bookshelves. They were built into the walls in the space that we used last year, and they're not in the space we have. The next big item is under custodians, regular salaries, and this is one of those gray areas. This was, and Tina and I talked about this a couple years ago. Actually, I think it was 3 years ago. One full-time custodian was cut from PCS. There had been 4, and they cut it back to 3. This year, our subline for the custodial staff at PCS is overrun by, I think we're around $4,000 over our sub-staff right now. Previously, they would just cover. When they had 4 people, they would, get by a day because there's an extra body to help out. But they can't do that with 3. And as well, the custodians generally take all of their vacation time on non-student time, which then during the summer puts us at a skeleton crew. So we're always trying to scramble. So that's why that was left in there as a maintenance of effort.
And so you've decreased the substitute line.
Right, we decreased the sub line.
But it's a much smaller figure, so.
Right, we decreased the sub line to go with it, even though, if we don't have that halftime position, we really need to increase, that sub line would have to go up considerably to be able to cover that, so.
Yeah, but it might not need to go up by 15,000.
Right, with the, you mean with the benefits and the?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a decision to be made.
Yep.
And if I could add one thing, this is one of those examples where we feel we've cut so far.
Yes, I understand.
That we're bleeding at the seams. So again, we discussed whether this was just adding more substitute in, and then how many hours are we asking those substitutes to work, and is it really a real position that we need? So.
And we do have occasion when we can't get a sub. It's not a real desirable job to be a substitute custodian in a school, so it does make it, it does make it kind of tough. And we have had nights when we don't have a sub, so we normally have 2 custodians to do the whole building at night. When we have one, it's pretty much the bathrooms and trash.
Yep.
It's all that gets done.
Yeah, the other piece too is we've had a bit of a snowy, wet winter, and so then you need extra help and people staying later, and then you either have people not there during the day for lunches because they've been doing the work late at night, or you're paying overtime, which ends up being a cost we want to avoid.
Yep. Understood.
That's it through there, and then down to teacher salary. Our music went to full-time this past year.
Yeah, that was, again, one of those errors that were corrected. So in the past, we had a music teacher that was an itinerant and going to different schools, and she's now full-time at PCS, but the salary wasn't changed to full-time at PCS, which is the cost center it's supposed to be in. And we hired a new music teacher that shares between Minot and Elm Street, and that's the additional position that we got for our K2 music program. So.
And that was all approved in
last year's.
So
they're here this
budget we're
year.
currently using.
Yeah. We go down through benefits is, the estimated cost and the increases in insurance and selection ed tech benefits, employees making, choices to take benefits. Okay, purchase professional services, went up $3,500. There are 2 pieces of that. One is Ferry Beach was considerably more expensive than we had budgeted for this year. And the second thing is that this was another one of those situations where we're trying to balance the cost more closely per pupil than we have been. What that means is that PCS is now going to be paying for about half of the cost of Ferry Beach, because that's about where we are per pupil. So that's why that shows that much of an increase.
So that line, it's called purchase professional services, but it's basically Ferry Beach.
The most part, yes.
For the most part. And is that what
Kids for Children, which
is it's the same line in the other 2 budgets? Okay.
Yep.
They just said Ferry Beach in the notation, so okay.
Okay.
Got it. I didn't know whether it was PT and OT or I don't know what might fall into that category.
Employee training and development, along with the other 2 schools. That was, looking at the stuff that could not be covered by grants and, in the work on the writing curriculum. The big one, and this is big for for my bottom line too, the charter schools. This year there were 11 Poland residents, or children of Poland residents, who attended charter school in Gray. 5 of them were pre-K, and our pre-K was full. So I can't tell you if they were going to attend or not, but we didn't have space regardless. We had 45 students, even adding that section. So there was the potential of those 5. Now, we don't know. 1 student has already returned. The parents weren't happy with the experience. So that child has returned to PCS. I don't know if we will have more in the future or not. That's kind of hard to tell.
Is the tuition prorated?
Yes, it is.
It is?
Yeah, so we get billed by our account in October, and then we'll get billed on our account in April. So we won't have to pay the portion of the year that child did not attend.
Colleen, you had a question?
Yeah, just on a broader question on the charter schools for a sec, since we just touched on it. So am I right that the way that works is that they're counted in our pupil count for the state's purposes, for EPS, and for the money coming into the district, and then we have to pay out the money? And is that an equal equation? Do we pay out the same dollars that came in? I know we have overhead costs and things like that, but like if the state amount per student is $7,500, just to pick a number, is that what we send out to the charter school, or do we send them some higher or lower fee?
We send them the 7,500. Ours is somewhere in the 6,500, I believe. And then on top of that, we have to pay out the portion that we get for assessment, the portion we get for technology, and the portion we get for transportation.
Okay.
So there's additional fees on top. So
so technology?
Technology, assessment.
Oh, assessment was the other one.
And transportation.
And we are responsible for transporting.
We don't have to transport them, but the charter school gets the money that we got for those students. And that's through the EPS formula. So for our 12 students, it costs us $91,000 this year, which we were fortunate, because if they're economically disadvantaged, it costs more. If you have any ELL students, it costs more. If they're special ed, you have to pay the special ed costs out. So like an ELL student, actually, we would not only have to pay the $6,300 or whatever our number is, but we'd have to pay 7.7 of that again.
Yep.
So it increases depending on if they have
Other needs.
Yep.
And so, just to get a sense of the numbers, so you said there are 12 students across the district who have gone to the charter school. 11 of them are kids from Poland.
And
because
one-
it's in gray, right? It's right down though.
And one from Elm Street.
And one from Elm Street.
And as Rick was talking about the pre-K, that's really concerning for us, because you get a double subsidy for every pre-K child.
Yeah.
So you only really need 7 pre-K children to pay for a teacher for a full class of
Yep.
pre-K. So that's why one of our goals is to make sure we have teaching, we have a pre-K program for all students that we can, because it impacts our budget a lot.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Okay, bottom of the page, there's a decrease in the instructional supplies. We managed to trim some out of there. Some of it was moved to my K-2 line, but not all of it. We did save some there. Trips and transportation. This is, again, trying to put this in line with our actual expenditures, especially with some of the Ferry Beach stuff. When we travel there, Minot and Elm Street are able to share a bus. PCS classes are large enough that we have our own bus, so is some of that increase, why that's a little more expensive. Employee training and development, this is under the K-2, which, again, this is part of the writing workshop, the Lucy Calkins and the stuff that couldn't come
So,
out of.
okay, so we now have, could I just point out, we have 4 different ways that we refer to this program across the district. So
Yeah.
for those of us on the outside looking in, it would be awesome if we picked one way to talk about that, so we could recognize it all the way
Yep.
through. So
That is a good point.
doesn't matter to me which one, but let's just pick one so we know
What's
we're
your
talking.
favorite
Name what
writing
it
workshop?
is.
Right.
Right,
Yeah, I was gonna
which
say-
is the Teachers College, and that they have people who present and do sessions in there.
But if you put the
Yeah.
content, like Scott was saying, if you put the content area, writing, whatever, then
Writing,
it would have
right.
a lot more reference
Yes.
Yes.
for the rest of us.
Or we can use the name of the college.
Thank you.
Okay, and then the next line, the instructional supplies, again, this is some of the money that was
Yep.
shifted out of that 3 to 6, but, the 3 to 6 came down, I'm trying to remember, 4,500 roughly? Yeah, 4,500, and that only increased about 1,300, so, we did have an increase in books. The Common Core requires students do a lot more work around informational tasks. So, you know, nonfiction pieces of writing. And we simply don't have those materials for our younger grades. So that was a deficiency that we had. The next series of lines are all fall under the 4-year-old program. So the halftime teacher and the halftime ed tech, again, this year were paid out of title and local entitlement funds. And we knew those would go into the budget, that we paid the teacher out of title money as a reduction in class size. But obviously you can't do that twice. We're not reducing it again.
So the position is not increased or changed, but how we're paying for it, i.e. we're having to pay for it now is
Yeah.
what's changed.
We paid for that out of Title II for a class size reduction grant.
And the same thing, it's the same case with the ed tech. And then the benefits go along, you know, we've added a halftime, so the benefits go up with that. Again, the biggest increase in this is, you know, being able to offer a pre-K to all of everybody that wants to have it in Poland. We need the instructional supplies. Again, last year we didn't budget that. We got the teacher and the tech into, you know, either title or local entitlement, but hadn't really budgeted for the materials, and we again cut out of other areas and scrambled and made that piece work for this year, but we need to support it.
Okay.
Anybody have any questions besides me?
Oh, no,
Colleen?
well, you go first.
No.
I've asked plenty. You go right ahead. They're sick of me.
We've heard a lot tonight from you, Rick, about the pre-K program and about how last year there were more students than we could accommodate.
Mm-hmm.
What do we need to do to change that for next year?
Well,
was it a space problem? Was it a resource problem?
it was a resource problem. I think when we went into it last spring, we looked at it as, you know, there had been one full-time teacher, and we knew that there were more people in Poland that would want pre-K than were currently getting it. So we made the decision to increase that position, another half-time teacher, so one more section of pre-K, and not knowing, we assumed that it would fill up, but we weren't sure. And it was also a matter of the funding on it, you know, how we were able to put it under title, so it didn't increase the district budget at that point. The other thought that went with it is, you know, when the student, our student count is, I'm trying to think of it, how to explain it well. It's basically we're a year behind, right? Our student count affects next year's subsidy. So if we add 15 kids like we did this year, that's 15 more students on our roster at PCS. Therefore, in our count for next year and the subsidy received for the following year, there's 15 more students. So it kind of washes itself out that following year.
Unless you keep it.
Yeah, and
Right.
so, and one of the things with the pre-K is that it comes back to what looks like it's fair is not really fair. We had one pre-K teacher at all 3 schools, but PCS, Poland Community, has twice as many citizens. So to get closer to fair, they really should have 2 full-time pre-K teachers. And, you know, that is our ultimate goal, would be not just to have this 1.5, but to have 2 full-time. But again, considering budget constraints, last year we put it in grant funds. And if we do have, during registration, the numbers to show that we need that other half-time, we're going to try to do another class size reduction for the next half-time. And then we get the grant money to pay for it the first year, and then it's funded the second year, so that money comes in the subsequent year. So we do have
Kinda like the
long-term
bus.
plans. Yes, it's just like the buses.
Right.
You have to pay up front, but you get the money the subsequent year. And so we do have, we are thinking further out than just this half-time position. We really believe we probably are going to need 2 full-time positions here to meet the needs and really to make it equitable for the Poland citizens for the pre-K. But we are hopeful that if we do have enough to fill another class, that we can get another class size reduction grant.
Okay, great.
Colleen?
My question was super
Sorry.
simple, which is, what's the student head count at PCS now?
We are 485 right now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I just wonder, the four-year program, and there was a lot of debate and discussion about that when that first was rolled out. And, you know, we were told that, yes, there's going to be the subsidies, which will cover, but I wonder really what is that net gain? And I know there is some, but I wonder what that is, and if that can be flushed out so people can see that, because I think there's a lot of concerns that, yes, you're getting the money for the first year, but then after that, we're having to pay and for the teachers and.
No, we get money every year for it.
But the teachers come under our district budget, right?
Yeah, but we
That's
get,
each year?
no, every year.
Oh, every
They
year.
do. So every year we get funding, and we actually get double funding. And I did flush the numbers out last year. I don't have them with me, and I haven't looked at them since last budget season, but my memory is it's somewhere between $300,000 and $350,000 we made on our pre-K programs. And that's above costs. So it was substantial, and I'm saying that, and I know I'm saying it on TV, and I'm going back to memory. So please forgive me, all of you out there, if those numbers are not accurate. I will make sure I have the full information last year. Hopefully forever. The legislature has big plans for increasing support for early childhood, because their findings are, of course, that it benefits schools and you know, societies, you know.
Reduce costs.
Yeah, well, it increases graduation rates, it decreases incarceration rates, all of those things that we face when we don't educate children at an early level or early age. So how long will the double subsidies last? I don't know, but as
They'll probably go away sooner if you keep saying that, so.
But they are promoting that. They do use that to promote schools to have these programs. They're very important. So we certainly are dedicated to making sure all the students that are 4-year-old have an opportunity.
Mariel?
And I will try to find those figures and bring them back next time. But I remember being pleasantly surprised at how much we made when you took out salaries for teachers and also transportation costs, how much on top of that we brought in our funding.
Mariel?
So a little bit of variation on that theme. So we have an increase overall over 50 students, K to 6. Of those, do you know how many increased pre-K positions we had this year? So you're saying, you know, you were up 30 students and so on. So out of all those, that count of over 50 students, how many pre-K slots did we add this year?
For me, none.
For me, none. Okay, so right there, that's 42, 44 new students that are not pre-K.
At least for me, they were not pre-K.
So how many slots do we add at PCS?
Well, we added, it was 15 additional pre-K.
Yeah.
And that's right around our student increase, our student population increase. I think it's 14 or 13 was our total increase from last year.
Okay, so you're kind of, if you add in the pre-K, you're kind of at the same
Right.
level in terms of the K to 6.
Correct.
You didn't have really any gain.
Right.
Okay, that answers my question.
Any further questions for Rick? Seeing none. Thank you.
Tina, are you gonna fill?
Now I have a real bomb for you, though.
Wait.
Uh-oh.
Wait, yeah.
I'm gonna intervene before you do that to yourself. So the question that I have, Tina, and we don't need to dig into it right now, but I remember last year a series of conversations about the whole equity issue, which we've touched on a little bit here today, and we had to do all this kind of rigmarole to get us within the equity guidelines across and there was a term of art, and I can't remember now what it was.
For the comparability?
Comparability,
Yes.
that was the word. It wasn't equitable, it was comparability. So, and last year we had to really kind of do some maneuvering to kind of make that work. Are we having to do that again this year, and is that reflected in here anywhere, or are we going to talk about that later?
So we did have to do some comparability work this year. We've worked it out now because we've got Minot at a level where they can
Yep,
receive Title I
so that
services.
helps, right.
So if you have a school that doesn't receive services because their free and reduced lunch rates are not significant enough, you have to compare the other two schools to that one school. And that's where we were struggling, because of course we know Minot's a smaller school, they have some smaller class sizes for some of those, some of their grades. Now that they qualify because they have increased free and reduced lunch, we average the three schools, and they have to be within a percentage number to be comparable. And with that, the three of them averaged, we are meeting comparability, but that's why I had to rewrite the grant. I did that about a month ago.
Okay.
And we were not considered comparable without making that change. So right now, we have to be pretty careful about adding any positions at like Minot, because that would knock that out of balance again. We were pretty close, but
Yep.
we're okay as we stand.
I have a couple of questions for
Sure.
Angie and Arthur. Arthur, what was your head count at Minot?
267 the last time I checked.
267, close enough? Angie? 295? Okay, thank you.
And so one of the things that we talked about doing is each one of the principals were going to prepare their maintenance of effort budget, but if they had a priority list, things that they felt their school really needed, but wasn't in the maintenance of effort, they were going to put it out there, planting the seed, preparing for conversations down the line. Now, Arthur and Angie have everything they could ever desire.
No.
But, maybe not. But they don't have a priority list for you, but Rick does have a priority list for you. So that's his last piece
parting
that he-
gift?
Yes, that's his parting gift.
yes.
For you
Outstanding.
to
And
think
it's
about.
just-
This is from the man with the 7% increase. I'm just going to
This
put that
is,
out there.
yeah, this is obviously, these are pieces that are, again, not maintenance of effort, and I recognize that. So these are things that we're looking at that really are needs at PCS that we currently are not addressing. The ones under stipends, those are relatively straightforward. And again, it's an equity among the schools. We have 5 team leaders at Poland Community School, and that structure was established prior to adding a pre-K at all, even the first pre-K. So our staffing has grown, and the representation of the staff in our leadership team needs to be more balanced than it is. So that's why I am looking at, we need that team leader.
Excuse me, how many team leaders do you, how many?
We have 5 currently.
5, so the
There
same
are
number as
5 at
Minot.
Minot
Okay.
and 6 at Elm Street. An additional RTI coordinator. Currently, we have 1 RTI coordinator at each of the schools. And we're at 485 versus, and my numbers are off a little down here. So, you know, Elm Street's off about, actually, both of them are about 10 shy. So, right now, we have 1 stipend, and I'm splitting it between 3 people to try to do this. But it's the amount of time that's required of them to try to keep up is really pretty unfair. So, asking for that. The pre-K teacher, again, our strategic plan says we'll offer pre-K for everybody. The intent, again, like as Tina mentioned, is that if numbers dictate that we need a second full-time teacher, that we would look at trying to fold that into the grant. So hopefully that really ends up with no cost to add that pre-K teacher. Again, that would be the the funding around that. I guess
if I
in
could-
addition, I had put in here, in addition, 5 of our possible students attended a charter school this year, with our subsidy, our funding for that, what we're paying charter schools being around $7,000 a student. If we can keep them, it pays for itself.
And of course, we don't have any idea about grant funding until the summer, so if we're wanting to make sure it's in there, we need to budget for it, but.
And are you allowed to speak with the families who elected for the charter school to see whether whether their motivation was because there was a waiting list, or because there was something about the school that appealed to them, and to figure out whether those kids are likely to come back in district or not? I don't know if there are any rules around those communications.
I don't think there's any rules, and we would just be calling for budgeting purposes. So ask, do they plan on staying next year, and if they're willing to tell us, why they went, if they went because of the program. I think that would be, there wouldn't be any, preconceived, ideas about that, but just asking for general budgeting
Yeah, it's the first year
information.
that we've done it, right?
Yes.
And we're trying to understand sort of what the trend is like, so.
Yes.
And I can only speak to the one who returned to us, that the draw for them was the arts program, that it had a much broader arts program than we could offer at Poland Community School. But then they found that that did not outweigh what they felt were the negatives. So, that was why they had chosen in the first place.
Yep.
Ultimately,
Well,
why they were.
if we're able to do that, and we have the capacity to, it seems to me that would be good information to have for partly for budgeting reasons and kind of anticipating student counts, but just to kind of understand what people see, how they view the district and other opportunities, and it's sort of, it's an emerging area, so the more we kind of understand about that, I think that's a good thing.
Next, grade 4 teacher. Right now, my 3rd grade, there are 74 students. That's my bubble class. So I have 2 classes of 25 and 1 class of 24. They're the largest numbers we have at the elementary level in the district. And it's also a class that, just getting our kneecap scores released, that 3rd grade is actually our lowest scoring class at PCS. So it's not only large, it has some high needs, and there is some pieces that we need to play. At this point, we need to play some catch up with them academically. So.
I have a question on that, Rick.
Yeah.
Are you looking to split the 4th grade class next year into 4?
Correct.
4 classes.
So that'd be about 18, 19 kids per class.
Right.
Okay.
And I have received a call from a parent and also one from a teacher of that grade level, wanting the budget committee to know that they hope that will be a priority for the committee, because 25 students in a class is a lot for those early primary grades.
And then the last thing I have on the list is to have a full-time assistant principal at PCS. We have 485 kids. It's, a lot of students. It's really challenging having somebody there 3 days a week. There are pieces that are really difficult to communicate and stay on top of. Who's dealing with which students, or which incidents that happen in school. Again, the staff is about 1.5 times larger than the other schools, so giving some instructional supervision. We also have the potential for some increased student enrollment. There are 2 things out there, one being that pre-K, which would increase our enrollment, but then there is also, currently there is an anticipated housing development in Poland that could have a pretty substantial impact on our student population too.
And what do we know about the timeline on that possible development?
So I met with Nick Adams and Chief Bossy and Scott Siegel about a month ago, I guess, to talk about some plans that have been submitted around ideas. So I'm meeting with Nick again, hopefully next week, on student enrollment and how that would impact us. And I'm hoping he'll have more details about what that could look like. They generally average 2 children per unit, whether that's a modular park or housing development.
Yep.
But that could be right, or it could be way off.
Sure, but is that really likely to impact us in the 2014-15 school year?
I don't know for sure.
Yeah, okay.
It's definitely it's being considered.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
But even if it's being considered, and even if they decided next month that, yes, we're going to go
Right,
ahead with it,
will it
would it
happen next
happen
year?
quickly enough that those places would be
Yeah.
ready for people to live in, and people would kids would be in the school in September? That seems unlikely to me.
I hope to have more information once I talk to Nick. I'm really not sure yet.
Okay, thanks.
I think it's still planning provision piece.
Yep.
So that gave you a grand total down at the bottom, what it looks like. You know, everything on that list, you know, represents $87,700, and that is another 3%. So, and I'm aware of that, but really seeing all of these things, you know, I wouldn't put them out there if I didn't see them as real needs for the school. You know, going back to the assistant principal, the EPS funding for the state is about in line, really, honestly, for PCS as far as administration. It's 305 students to one administrator. So we're about in line with that. We're short, though, and one of the things that we find we spend a lot of time with our students is, you know, guidance is 350 to 1. So we're actually short, you know, about a third of a position there under the guidance support for our students. And there are a lot of issues that fall around that for us. You know, students in distress or dysregulated, and us needing to support them, so.
And so, if I remember correctly, Tina, some of these, maybe not all, but a few of these items look familiar to me from the list on the PowerPoint from the first day, so.
We certainly had the grade, it said grade 3 because it's actually third graders this year. It'd be fourth grade next year in there. And the assistant principal position was also on.
And there was something with RTI, but maybe it was something. Maybe it was not the coordinator position.
It was so if this current assistant principal, which is Kelly Marston's position, were to go full time at PCS, right now she's 2 days at Bruce Whittier.
Yep.
So what you're going to hear from Bruce Whittier is a similar story. Is they have no RTI supports for students, and where again they're struggling with how do we handle the student behaviors, give them some, you know, plan the math interventions, the reading interventions that we're supposed to. So you're going to see on their wish list, Sean's wish list next week, part-time dean of students, part-time RTI coordinator, that position would be focused on supporting students in a manner similar to what we have in our strategic plan.
Thanks.
And Rick, on your priority list, I like the way that you referenced the strategic plan. Thank you. Any further questions for any of our administrators here right now?
So
moving on to central office.
Yeah, central office is not just central office. It's what's that?
Nothing.
Back it up. You got a little more, Colleen.
Okay.
So this includes, I'm sure this will be very quick. This includes some of our district programs, summer school, our nurses, health, ESL, you know, so you'll see a range of things that we're talking about. And I'll start right with our K-8 summer school. This year we reduced summer school significantly because we had some grant funding. We had a one-time grant because our population went up and our poverty levels increased as well. So I think we got $15,000 from grant money. We won't have that next year. And so to compensate for that, we're increasing the teacher salary line by $2,000. That's basically allows us to have one teacher per grade level. So we have a teacher for 1 through 6, and they make $2,000 for their summer school experience. And that basically is the only increase.
Last year, we made a reduction, actually, in summer school and in the amount of programming that kids were getting. Did you see a difference in gains that kids made during summer school because we made a reduction last year?
So we didn't really have any, we went from 5 weeks to 4 weeks, I believe. So we had one, maybe like, is it 3 days a week or 4 days a week? So we had 4 days less. So I didn't hear anybody saying they felt that that was detrimental to the students, but we did have more staff and more opportunities for one-on-one or small group instruction because of the Title I grant. So they had probably had more staffing than they, or at least as much as they've ever had. But again, like you said, I think I can't remember what the budget was before I came, but it was pretty, we had pretty substantial cuts to it last year because of that $15,000 grant that we got from Title I.
Can you just remind me how many kids participate in both the K-9, K-8, and then the 9-12?
We had close to 100 students in our K-6, correct?
Yeah.
Carrie, how many high school, do you remember? Yeah.
Those students, we asked them today. We don't collect 100% of that money for every student, but so.
Well, it just gives me a ballpark. That's 130 kids or so, and that seems like a decent number.
Yes. And Bruce Whittier has probably another 20 or so, 20 or 30. So we have pretty good attendance at our summer school program. For the elementary, it's self-contained. They come for the full program. At the high school, if they finish their the standards that they're missing, they may only come for a week or two and be done. But I think Bruce Whittier may be similar. They some students.
Bruce Whittier is not done by standards. It's a full program.
Okay.
They switched that 2 years ago, so it was instruction.
Okay.
Sorry, Mrs. Marson, do you know a ballpark of how many Whittier students participate? No idea. Okay.
I think it was in the 40.
So, yeah, there's not big increases, as you can see, in those lines at all. We kept the high school the same. The high school, as Carrie said, brings in some money that offsets that, but we still budget for it because you never know how many students are going to not be able to afford the cost of summer school, and we definitely want them to get the support that they need. All right, so I'm going to move on to our health system, and this again is our nurses and the supplies that they need. We have the only increases we have really telephone, and again they're ready for an upgrade, and also employee travel. We have a new nurse at the high school, but she oversees the support staff that we have at the 3 elementary schools. So she does travel between all 3 schools, and you know, she does some professional development with them. She comes when there are significant issues, and needs to have the money there for doing that traveling from school to school. And there is an increase in the supplies line. It's only $200, and of course we all know that materials and supplies for the health office are, just like all other materials we get, are going up in price. So ESL, am I doing that one or you?
Oh, so I can start, you jump in there. So for ESL, we are creating ESL lines separately this year because the teacher who does do the ESL instruction piece does that part of her job for about 1/3 of the time, and the other 2/3 she's a teacher at the high school. So that's why you see her salary and benefits marked out here, but you don't see a percentage because the lines are new this year. As far as travel goes, she does go to primarily Elm Street School to work with students and teachers there who are English language learners, and so that's that small amount in there for her travel. The instructional supply, she doesn't need a lot, but she wants to have enough for her individual students' needs.
And one thing that I'll add is this was funded last year. It was just being funded out of the high school budget, and it's a district-wide budget. So that's why it needed to have its own line and be in an appropriate cost center.
And about how many kids are served with this program?
We have 4 students, I believe, at Elm Street that are ESL, and the way it works is you don't provide, the program doesn't depend on the students, it depends on the need. So you have to do an analysis of the students, and then from that analysis, you have to determine how much time they need, and then you have to fund it for that. So you could have one student and need a full-time person.
Right.
Or 11 people and need a 1/3.
Right, got it.
So it all depends on what their IEP, not their IEP, their ESL assessment determines.
Got it.
So, gifted and talented, all right. So you notice currently we have one teacher teaching all of our gifted students throughout the entire district. So you'll see the little note next to her salary line that says there will be changes. This is because she has been, prior to this year, she has been serving as a consultant or advisor to teachers, but not working directly with students. This year, according to the strategic plan, we wanted to change that focus and have her working directly with students. So this year, she actually is teaching full-time with the students directly. And she's focusing a lot on math, but also doing a lot with literacy as well. So because of that, she needs to be under the teacher's contract, which means that her salary will be adjusted to match what it needs to be under the teacher's contract. And then we've got her benefits there, retirement, teacher tuition. Now, once this teacher becomes under the teacher's contract, part of the contract offers a benefit around tuition to all teachers. That's one pot of money that is capped. So she will lose the $2,400 that she has had in the past, separate just for her, because she's now going to access the same capped pot that everyone does, yes. If you notice that, so employee travel, she does travel to all of the schools, and so what we noticed was that what was in there before was not sufficient to her travel needs. So that's why you see an increase there of $250. You'll also notice that instructional supplies have risen to $750, and that is because she also runs a GATE, Gifted and Talented Art program and music program after school on certain Wednesdays, and they estimated that supplies for the children participating in those programs are at about $15 per child. This year she has 45 children participating in those programs, and she's trying to use supplies right out of the art teachers line and the music teachers, but they're finding that that's not sufficient. So that's why you see the increase in the supplies for those children. Anticipating we'll have about the same number of children participating in those for next year. Keeping the same for her books and same for her dues and fees.
Do you want to present your wish list while we're on?
I was just gathering, yes. So to follow Rick's suit.
Not wish list, priority list.
That's right, that's right.
Much better nomenclature.
Absolutely.
I was going to say something, but
Right.
Sorry.
Gotta keep practicing for that one.
Yes.
So in our strategic plan, A2A is all about the gifted and talented education, and it says that by August of 2013, we will develop a schedule, plans, and staffing requirements for a cohesive gifted and talented education program for students identified. Ideally, the program will begin implementation in this school year and be fully implemented by the school year 2014-15. So, as I said earlier, we have one teacher serving all of our students, and with her directly teaching a lot of the math this year with grades 4, 5, and 6, that is taking a lot of her time. Plus, she's also trying to meet with students around the literacy, plus the art and music programs. So what is on our priority list is an additional gifted and talented teacher to meet the needs of what we discovered we have in the district.
Does the EPS formula talk about GATE and numbers of students in the district and numbers of teachers per students that are kind of average or expected?
So you can only have 3 to 5% of your students identified as gifted in the district. So we are within that range, and the EPS formula doesn't give us a per pupil. They just reimburse us for 101% of the teacher. So that's how that allocation comes in. So it's not by our student count, it's by our teacher count for that one. So they would count as a teacher, but you get 0.01.
I'm having trouble following for some reason.
I'm trying to picture what the sheet looks like. On the 279s that we get, you get 100% for your teacher.
Yep.
But there's a tiny bit more. It's like $300.
Yeah, but if, I guess.
It's 01, I think, on top of
Yeah.
your 100%.
I get that part, but I'm trying to figure out, like, does, and maybe it's not even EPS, but just kind of generally accepted standards or whatever, that if, you know, and there's no clear definition on a class size, is 18 the right number, is 21 the right number, is 22 too much, is 28 too much? But is there some kind of guideline or typical thing on the gate side about what a ratio should be?
There's not, because you can meet that standard in a variety of ways. The way we're meeting it is, and when she was a consultant, she just pulled out small groups and did special projects with them. The way we're meeting is to say the classroom teacher will be differentiating instruction for all students. So the gifted students were being taught by their classroom teacher.
Right.
For the majority of the time, with her doing some enrichment type activities with them. So now we have her doing the majority of the instruction for our 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students in math, and the classroom teachers are still providing the differentiation for literacy for the most part in the classroom.
Okay.
And so if we have 2 teachers for GATE, we will get, that will count in our 279s, we'll get funding for them. We have 1, so we get funding for 1. So it's, if we chose to have 3, we would get funding for 3. And so that's, again, but there's no standard where they say if you have 3% of your students and it's this number, you have to have this many teachers.
Okay. But but what you're saying is the funding follows the number of teachers that we determine in the district is the appropriate number for the identified students.
Correct.
Got it.
Does the funding cover the salary and benefits and all of that, or is it just?
Yes.
When you say 101%?
Yes.
Tina, do you want to see that? I have it.
Sure.
So does that mean if we add a GATE teacher, there's no fiscal impact? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying the money would, let me look at the form here. But yes, that's what I think I'm saying.
Here goes the 3rd page.
That sounds good.
Under other side.
Here we go, yeah. So for gifted and talented, we had 1 teacher, base year expenditure was 50,000, so that would be her salary and her benefits. And we got 101% covered of that. So yes, that's what that means. If we had 2, we would get whatever the total salary is, and we'd get that times 101.
Okay.
Would we get that next year, or is this another one of those?
It would be one of those 1 year out, because it's our count for this year. So on this form, it says, it will say, what did you have last year, and that's what we're gonna fund into your stream for your next half.
So if we hired a second one for this fall, we would pay that the first year?
Yes.
So there is a fiscal impact in the first year?
So like the bus and like pre-K?
Right.
Yes.
Same idea?
Yeah.
I just put out there that Elle's been doing I know you guys already know this, but she's been doing some amazing work with the community. I know I can speak for Mechanic Falls. She's working with Shannon Bissonette at Better Than Average and John Hawley at the town office, and they're applying math to the real world. So, I mean, having someone do that with literacy would be amazing. So I just want to put a plug in. I mean, she's doing it all, and I think she's doing an amazing job, and I think we can do a better job if we had 2 people.
Mariella, you have a question?
I was just gonna say, so can we check into that and confirm that in terms of I mean, I've gotta believe there's an upset limit someplace on how many teachers you could add to that, so in terms of.
I could check, but
Yeah.
I know, if you look at the form, it doesn't list that you have this many students in this. It just says, here's how much you expended.
Right.
And you get 101% based on it. That's what the sheet says. So that's, I feel confident telling you that that's what the information.
No, not in terms of what we're getting, but in terms of, future additions.
We couldn't go to the state and say, great, we'll take 10.
Yeah.
Right, so.
That's what I was getting.
Right.
I think all children are gifted in talent.
But you could, because what I'm hearing you say is it's kind of parallel to the ELL in some ways, right? That the level of service for the kids really depends on what they need. It's not about a per pupil count, it's about kind of what you need to do to provide them with. So even if it's 3%, it could.
Right. So, Mariella, what you want me to ask is, ask of the state, do we have a limit on how many teachers we can have for GT?
How many
that would be
positions?
reimbursed
Right.
through 270?
Right,
Okay.
right, that was my question.
Not that we're looking to hit that limit.
Yeah.
No,
But
I
simply
just,
would like to know
you
if there is one.
And Tina, you're capturing that?
I am.
Great, thank you. So, anything else about GT? So student staff support, you can see that we have reduced our stipends line. That now just has our web manager in there. We used to have a stipend for ESL in that line, but of course now that went to a 1/3 position, and it's properly funded in its own section. And everything else stayed the same. Again, teacher tuition, K-8, teacher tuition 912 is capped at $50,000, 25 each. You know, this will be, you know, could be impacted by negotiations, we don't know that, but at this point, we're leaving that all status quo. And again, you have ed tech tuition there, that's per contract. There, they have the same thing, they have some, in their contract, they can have $750 towards courses or workshops. And we're not changing that at all. Our RSU school board committee, we have done quite well with the budget that we have, so we think that's an appropriate budget for you, for the school board. You board members have any ideas that you want that changed, make sure I know. And then you will see the liability insurance. This is where we saw the big decrease. Theirs went down 51%. And that helped us overall in the district because the other areas went up.
Do you know what's the purchase professional service line in relation to the school committee?
That's our audit.
Ah.
So that full line is for our yearly audit.
Okay. And this is the only place in the entire budget that shows up, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And again, that was a big savings. We have a new auditor starting last year, and I don't remember what it was before, but it was a pretty significant savings with this new auditor that Mike had worked with previously. And now we're down to central office. So we have some increases in administrative salaries. As you know, last year we didn't have, we had an interim, not that he wasn't a full superintendent, he was. But you didn't have a hired superintendent, you had an interim in here. So with bringing Kim on board and her new contract, that amount is up to match our contracts. And
does that just cover the 2 positions?
it covers 3.
3 positions.
It also has, oh no, actually, Lauren's is below, I would say, so that covers both of ours.
Okay.
And part of my salary comes out of Title I, so there's a little bit more salary in another line that you don't see until the summer.
Mhm.
So that's a little deceptive as far as covering both of us, but it covers most of both of us. And let's see, central office staff renegotiated their contracts last year, so any changes in here would be related to that.
And I'm sorry, and contracted services, central office is what?
Contracted services. I don't know what that is. That's a good question. I'll have to ask. That might be, I did ask and I can't remember. Let me think about that.
Okay, no problem.
If I can't remember, I'll let you know next week.
Sure.
I'm gonna have to move on because I can't remember.
That's okay.
So we have, again, software-related maintenance and repairs. So we're in the cloud. We have a new software contract and a new server. So you can see we've got, we're in the cloud. We've got those additions there.
It's a good place to be.
Our office lease purchase, you can see, is coming down. We're making our last payment next year, which will be nice. don't think there are any other big changes here. Heating fuel, of course, we've got that up a little bit, anticipating an increase.
Is the 12% business staff benefits, is 10% of that anticipating health insurance?
Where are you seeing that?
I'm sorry, I am,
Three-quarters of the way down.
yeah, about three-quarters of the way down, about eight or so lines from the bottom.
The 12%, okay.
Yep.
So, yes, that would be probably somebody taking, it's either the 10%, and it may be that somebody, might have been underfunded last year, so.
We
that
had
might
some
be
staffing
doing it too.
changes last year too, in central
Oh, yeah.
office staff, so that might be, somebody might be taking benefits that
Right.
their predecessor was not.
Yeah, we had new accounts payable.
The contracted services, would that have been legal?
Where do you see that one?
The one that I asked
So
about.
you asked about, you said contract.
No, legal is all in the school board's budget, and so I'm trying to think if it, I don't know if that might have something to do with the phones or the copiers or something there, but I'll have to ask, I can't remember. And, let me look. Custodian, that's just our typical, we have a custodian who comes in 3 times a week and vacuums our floors, and just some small increases on her part. And that's it. The central office. And I would say, although that's a 7% raise, it looks like an increase, it's actually a very significant decrease from the year before. So we went from 3 staff to 2, before we talked about this. It's a $69,000 savings from the year prior. So although it's an increase, a big part of that is because we were understaffed, because of the interim and the changing in the staff.
So how can an increase be a decrease?
If you look at 2 years ago, not last year.
No, not last year.
Not
Oh,
last year.
all of that. Okay.
So
All
I
right.
just, although that, I'm explaining, I'm pulling a Rick and I'm explaining away my raises, my increases.
He didn't do, no, Angie wins the prize on that. Well, 50% of that I had nothing to do with, and I just want you to know.
When you said last year, I was looking at this number here.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, based
Yeah, I'm
on
on to you.
Based on '84, there's a big reduction there. So, sorry, Rick. Didn't mean to give you credit for that good move when it was Angie. So that's our budget presentation. We don't have any, well, of course, we do have some wish list items, but no priority wish list items.
Priority items.
Dan?
You mentioned your heating oil cost. You must buy your oil and gas through one, you got 5 or 6 buildings.
We do, we absolutely do. In fact, we went through a process earlier in the fall. We put out requests for bids.
Sure.
We don't use enough fuel to get a lot of great bids. So what we ended up doing is working with some local people and work with them to get the best cost that we could. And we go through Bryant.
You do?
Who's local?
Bryant services all your buildings?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Very
Yeah.
That's good.
That's good.
I have a question. I know one of the priorities that had, in the first overview, was for a behavior specialist. Where would that fall?
That's in Holly's budget, and she shared that last week.
Oh, okay, so I missed that one. So that was in the special ed budget.
Yeah, that's in the special ed budget, and what we're going to do as, what we're going to do is we're going to make a list for you all, so it will have Rick's items on there, it'll have Holly's items on there, and, we'll make sure our high school and middle school priorities are on there, and then we'll be able to look at them all as a unit and say.
So then after all the
Yes.
presentations, then go back.
Yes,
Yep.
so that we can have those conversations.
And another thing on that original list was the halftime resource room teacher in Minot.
Yes.
Which Holly also talked about.
Yes. And that's what Arthur had actually talked about. He said, should I bring those up again? But they were shared last week on
Yeah.
Holly's priority list, so although.
But I think it is hard to get lost.
Yes.
Because there's so many.
Just trying to keep
Trying
an
to
eye
figure
on the
out-
big
Well,
picture.
and it's the benefit and the complexity of talking about a lot of things district-wide,
Yes.
is that they're kind of in different buckets, or they show up
Yes.
in different places. So is there any word from the state on when we're going to get our numbers?
We had a superintendent's conference just 2 weeks ago, and they said we would have them by the middle of February.
Okay.
So that's almost now. Maybe by our next meeting is what my hope is. I don't know if they're, on schedule, but
Yep. Okay.
we heard from Jim Ryer just 2 weeks ago, so,
Yep.
and he said the middle of February.
Okay.
So I think they probably have that was probably pretty, I hope that was accurate. And that will answer a lot of our,
Yeah.
at least our revenue.
Well, it'll let us know about the top half.
Yes.
Right. Maybe the legislature will figure out what it wants to do with revenue sharing, which we were
Yes.
before, which will.
And do you have have you heard when they're talking about that decision?
Well, the Senate's already voted. House is gonna go to the House now, and I don't know when. I don't know whether it's gonna go there tomorrow or, what's tomorrow,
I
Wednesday?
think it's next Tuesday, Colleen.
Next Tuesday, on the House side?
That's what I heard on the
I just know
way over
the Senate
tonight
voted on
radio.
it earlier, and it passed overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
To do the revenue
To
sharing with
restore the
towns.
40
40%.
million, I think it was, that was gonna be taken out, but,
Okay.
and then we'll see what happens on the House side. And then the governor, it has to make his decision about what he's gonna do with that. And then we see whether we go back and start all over again, or,
Right.
move on. So we'll see.
Any further questions? Well,
Just
Sure.
one quick one, Scott. This isn't to this budget specifically, but was surfing through the channels last night, and at your board meeting, I heard talk, and of course, this is the worst time to come in, to channel surf, to come in on the middle of a conversation. I probably missed a lot of important parts of it, but we were talking a feasibility study possibly for a bus garage. Okay, just a suggestion that you may want to contact the code enforcement officer first to see if that's even feasible, because that property down there, I think some of it is in resource protection, so.
Yeah.
And, okay, so that, just maybe, was just thinking that you might want to save some steps, that's all, because I'd hate to see you,
If it's not
hire
feasible.
somebody, and then,
Right.
before you even get out of the gate,
Yeah.
that you can't do it, so. Yeah. Just a suggestion.
Great, thank you.
Ellen.
Thank you.
all right, well, you are all dismissed.
Well, thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Always wanted to say it.
Just like we had half an hour.